we have to start. So you are welcome to the African Digital Leadership Innovation Network Tech Series 2021. And this is the last edition of our webinars for 2021 year. So, and we are looking today at the supply chain in Africa, the digital trade prospects, and its sustainability. So today with me, very esteemed speakers who are joining us from different parts of Africa and Europe. I have Mondha Kanfia from Tunisia, and also based in France. Mondha, you're welcome.
Good morning.
And
Good morning, everyone.
I have with me Sand Umba Kalu from Nigeria. And he's a trade research specialist based in Abuja, Nigeria. And I have Mark Deploy from Kenya, who is an IoT specialist, and at the same time, the CEO of Ubande Limited in Kenya. Mark, you are welcome. You're welcome, Mark. And I have also Ifi. She was supposed to be online. I don't know what happened. She's the UNDP representative on board. So maybe she has a technical problem. I don't know. And our topic for today, it's quite interesting. We are looking at new evolution of supply chain in Africa. And with the African Continental Free Trade Agreements, and we are looking at possibility of harmonizing the supply chains, which is could be a very interesting venture, really. But we'll see how we try to analyze this. And probably I would like to start with Mondha. Can we start with you? Introduce yourself and what you do right now in the supply chain logistics sector. And yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken, and welcome to everyone to this session. My name is Mondha Kanfia, and I'm heading the think tank of a business council based in Tunisia, but also with some agencies worldwide in Africa and in France. And we are dealing with public policies mainly. So we are trying to have first a good understanding of the situation, the context, and the policies of each country in the region, and how to promote a better performance, economic performance through innovation and logistics, innovation and supply chain, if you want. And I will come back to the link between innovation and logistics. I'm a policy advisor, and I led some assignments for different governments through the World Bank or the OECD. On supply chain logistics infrastructure, PPPs, and I'm very glad to contribute to this panel today.
Okay, thank you. And today we'll try to start now with our first speaker because she has to leave shortly. Let me start with Ifi Ogo, and she will try to enlighten us what is most important now for the African Free Trade agreements and in terms of supply chain in Africa. And also she's a trade specialist. So Ifi, I would like to welcome you, and please just try to introduce yourself briefly, and you can just brief us. I can speak for as much as 10 minutes if you like. If you have some slides to share with us, it's also possible. And just brief us what is most important for the African Free Trade Continental Agreement in terms of supply chain, digital trade prospects, and its sustainability in Africa. You're welcome, Ifi.
Thanks very much, Kenneth. And firstly, to say good morning to everybody, and also to apologize that I'm not able to share my screen as I'm struggling with bandwidth.
Okay.
But I'll try to make this as quick as possible. So essentially, the AFCFTA is a trade agreement between African countries trying to set new terms of trade across board. One might say, oh, why is the case? Essentially, this is not necessarily something that is shockingly new. It's been in progress for the last 30, 40 years. And it started with African countries creating regional blocks in which they would say, oh, in this part of the continent, west, east, south, we will agree on terms of trade amongst ourselves. And so the idea now with the AFCFTA is to build a market for the continent in which the rules are predictable, in which the rules are clear, in which everybody knows what they can get. So if you go from west to south, even though you're not in the same regional block, you're able to enjoy preferences as an African. Your firm is able to enjoy those preferences. And this applies to goods and services now. And we expect that over the next few years, we'll begin to see the same sort of arrangements for investment, for the other parts of trade, things that may not necessarily be trade centric, but things like how are firms and how products going to compete, how do you preserve your IP also in the space, and importantly also for e-commerce and digital trade. And so when you then say what's the linkage to supply chains, essentially if you're going to trade, you're going to have that chain. How are you, if you sit in Gambia, going to be able to sell goods to somebody in Mozambique? That there's a whole chain that starts with you as a producer, that starts with your logistics person, starts with trade information, and that goes across all of that. Whether you send things by air or by sea or by land, how are you going to link all of those things, and how do you get your goods or your service to the consumer? Who are those involved? Who are the actors? What is the cost of that? Is it cost, does it make sense for you to trade? And then, from the e-commerce, the technology side, you also have to begin to say Africa was also on the road through the African digital transformation strategy of saying, how can we create an e-market, and so then you have to say, what is the linkages between this e-space Africa was already trying to create alongside AFCFTA and the AFCFTA as it is being rolled out. So what we see here is a very nice nexus of things to explore. And so one way to think about it is that the digital economy, digital trade, digital tools will be important for the AFCFTA to work even in itself. How are you going to trade if you don't know what to trade? How are you going to identify a producer, a supplier, a service provider in that chain if you don't know where to look? And so one thing we're going to see, I hope, is that we're going to have digital tools beginning to highlight areas of opportunity across the continent. Another possibility is saying, how can these digital tools begin to address the frictions that we have in our chains across the continent? About tracking the time, about tracking the cost, about payments, about saying that I want to buy something from this person, but I want to also be sure that this is something I should buy, about building trust also. I think that's another area that, that intersection of tech and chains will be something to address. Another thing that might be interesting is how to bring in a lot of our informal players into the space. A lot of the time, the restrictions, the requirements are burdensome. But is it possible that through some of these tools that could emerge, through these platforms for the chain, that these informal players might be able to find scope to join the market space and not have to deal with such steep entry or operational barriers? And then even in terms of trying to understand how trade in Africa works, I think that as we begin to look at supply chains and begin to look at how tech interplays with them, we might even be able to have a better idea of how Africa trades with itself. As it is now, we're estimating levels of trade. We look at formally recorded trade, we look at trade in goods. But if we begin to apply tech to our trade, to our chains, to how we operate, then maybe we can have a truer picture of who is trading what, the types of trade, the volumes being traded, where it goes, and what it means for whom. We might even have a more interesting sense of who gets what out of intra-Africa trade. Because as it is, we look more at the macro and say, oh, this is what moved from country A to country B. But do we really know who's trading? How can we have a more interesting understanding of the impact of trade upon people, upon sectors, and upon the, the specific cases in which they work? So these are a few thoughts to share with you as this goes along. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And probably before you go, do we have any questions for Ife? Because she will take a leave in the next 20 minutes or so. Do we have any question for her? Thank you for your input, Ife. It's quite interesting to understand the current status, especially the history behind this. And of course, we look forward to see how digital technologies could help in optimizing the processes. It's actually huge when we talk about supply chain and digital trade in Africa, and we'll probably would take some exemplary measures from Europe, where it is working very efficiently. And now also I heard recently that the Nigerian government wants to digitize the whole port operations that supports also the supply chain in Nigeria. And that is a very interesting development. And of course, we have similar news also coming from different countries in Africa. Everyone is now looking at digital technology in order to optimize the processes involved in supply chains, the value chain of the supply chain itself, and the trade prospects. Monha, does anybody have any question for Ife before she takes her leave?
Sure. Thank you, Ife, for the insights. And what are you doing as UNDP to harmonize the regulation and the cross-border trades in Africa, Ife?
I don't know, probably maybe because of the bandwidth. She's not online again, because she complained of bandwidth in the location where she is.
Okay, so let's...
because I think she's based in Ghana, I think so. Yeah. So,
okay,
what is your question again? Can you just...
The question is about the UNDP role in streamlining and helping the cross-border digital trade in Africa.
Okay. Cross-border digital trade. I will take note of this, and
maybe as a transition, I can start giving my position.
Yes, please. Yes, just continue, please. Yes.
Okay. So all of us knows that Africa is lagging behind in terms of infrastructure, basically, and we are thinking about digitizing something that is very weak at the beginning. So we have to consider both the infrastructure, the hardware side of the logistics and of trade, and then the digitalization, which is another issue. The investment gap in terms of infrastructure in Africa is around $100 billion a year. So you imagine the importance of this gap, and if we consider it as an impediment or as a condition to go in another upper layers in performing cross-border trades, we can see how difficult life is for entrepreneurs and for the market players. So here, many theories are rising around this. Should we wait until we have all these gaps reduced, or should we start digitalization process? Okay, so we can do both, because digital trades requires a digital ecosystem. And the digital ecosystem, we can think about the global one, which is more or less in place. And we can imagine that some African entrepreneurs could take advantage of international global value chains and global supply chains and go through them. But here we will comfort more the extraversion of the trade in Africa, because in Africa, the trade is extraverted, and the needs for economic performance is to develop also the intraverted commerce, and to enable everyone to get the basic services, because trade is bringing services, it is also bringing jobs, it's bringing well-being, in particular in this pandemic context. So we are thinking more and more about, let's say, local supply chains and quicker the cycles, logistic cycles. So all these questions should be debated country by country and also globally in the frame of this free zone, the African economic free zone, where we can think how to harmonize legislation, regulation, and more than this, because regulation and customs tariffs and so on this is details. What is needed is to institutionalize the digital trade. That means we have to create something like, an institution, a common institution, to protect the digital market, because there is a digital market boom, and we cannot imagine that it will grow up without at least some rules and a governance. And this governance could be done by entrepreneurs in party, if I can say that. So that means we cannot expect all from the governments, from states. We can start designing an enabling environment for trade logistics and for digital trades and digital logistics through, let's say, local entrepreneurs and civil societies. So that's my first insights, and I will come back with more details later, if you mind.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your brief introduction to the topic, and it's quite interesting. All what you have mentioned is really very something we have to think about. Are we starting from the scratch? Some countries are actually above, they are actually gone far already, while some are still lagging behind. And of course, what you have mentioned, it's very interesting. It's something we have to all have to think about. And we'll come back to you really shortly. And probably I would like to call on Sand Umba. Please, Sand.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Kenneth, for your dogged efforts to change things in Africa. It is not always easy when you are doing things from an innovative and knowledge-based perspective. Sometimes it might seem lonely that you are the one alone, and how are you going to change it? But I will encourage you to keep it up. Even while we are not physically with you to ginger you, but we are seeing your hard work. This is a personal sacrifice and a mission. You don't need to do this, but you are doing it for Africa, even while you are not here.
Yes.
I strongly believe that posterity will judge you fairly.
Amen.
For this effort. And very soon we'll start seeing technology changing narrative or changing situations in Africa.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is San Bakalo. I work for Africa International Trade and Commerce Research as Executive Director. I'm also a founder of International Trade and Research Center. I believe trade is one instrument for development, and Africa can utilize it. And when you then add trade and technology, we can accelerate our socio-economic development, address the issue of poverty, address the issue of unemployment, address the issue of crime, address the issue of inconsistency of government policies with technology. We address corruption. We make life better for everyone. So, and the topic today, I should be sharing my slide, but because the topic is broad, and I felt, do we have the whole day to go through this? It's a master, it's a PhD project, supply chain, digital trade, prospects, and sustainability. Supply chain, we are all witness of what has happened with COVID-19. What has happened with COVID-19 has exposed the weakness we have in our supply chain vis-a-vis the global value chain and regional value chain, connecting both chains. COVID-19 has shown us how weak and how vulnerable we are all. Not minding that we are in Europe, some people are in Europe, some people are in Africa, and they felt they are disconnected from the reality. The truth is that we are interconnected. And the only way we are interconnected is to global and regional value chain. And the way to accelerate, to ensure we address the vulnerability is through digitalizing our supply chains. Because digitalization creates new market and opportunity for firms to be able to access markets, process the time they get the raw material, and accelerate the time the raw material get back to the final consumer. Digitalization can help make that happen. And having said that, we also know there are a lot of barriers, especially in the African context, that inhibit digitalization of the value chain. We know recently that Africa with COVID-19, with the vaccine, we can't even access COVID vaccine because of logistic issue. Because of logistic issue, moving goods from Europe to Africa is a big challenge. Within Africa itself, as Ify has rightly pointed out earlier, is that Africa has the issue of not being able to trade with itself. I'll give you a classical example. For me, in Nigeria, to trade with even Togo, that is my neighboring country, this insecurity, the number of bottleneck of security people who will meet on the road, the goods that is person flying from Europe, UK to Nigeria will arrive here in 6 hours. Or the goods will arrive here in 6 hours. But moving goods from within Lagos to Togo will take me maybe about 3 days. That is unacceptable. But we know with digitalization, we can be able to address this, where I don't need to go in physically getting involved in moving my goods. I can put it in the system, and point A, we see in the system that, oh, it will take me 2 hours for my goods to arrive point B. And point B will make the vehicle available and move it from there. Point C will be waiting at his own point as a loop. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an introduction. And I will also share a study we did, kind of pointed out something. In Nigeria, the government wants to digitalize the process of our seaports. Apapa Port is one of the biggest seaports in West Africa. Government is making effort to digitalize it. And my organization, African International Trade, which is an international trade consultancy firm for the African market, we did a study to understand what they call the electronic call-up system for trucks. The electronic call-up system is, because of congestion and capacity frustration over congestion in the ports, gridlock, the government has introduced what they call call-up system, where you use technology and to call up the trucks. So trucks get into the ports as at when needed. We did this study to find out how effective and efficient is this call-up system. And I will be sharing some bit and bits from the study in my own presentation when I have the opportunity to do that, and as well as open to questions as we progress. Just my final remark, my opening final remark is, because we know that even when we talk about supply chain, and Africa is most countries are landlocked countries that depend on land, in fact, the transport infrastructure to connect, to move goods even services, because when you want travels, you travel by air, you offer services like an accountant or researcher. Africa still struggles in that area because, for example, a Moroccan can't fly in freely from Morocco to Gabon. You have to fly into France and then fly to Gabon. You have to fly into France, then fly to Gabon. When you're going back, you fly out to France and you fly into Morocco. So you see, services is also inhibited, is also disrupted because of challenges. But most heavy goods go by sea, and we know 80% go by sea. And we know this, the management of this require a huge investment and a huge human capital. And we believe, and I strongly believe, and my organization strongly believe that technology can help us solve this issue. And I'll be hoping for us to discuss on how we can solve this issue with technology. I itemize it 1, 2, 3. If we do this, we'll get it right. If we do this, we'll get it right. Bear in mind that even when we say technology, I will share some statistics. Africa is still way behind in internet infrastructure. How do we get the internet infrastructure out there to be able to accept people? And government, African government, I must call them out. I always insist that policy is to aid business development, not to kill it. You must put policies out to support businesses to grow. African governments have not been living up to expectation. Why do I say so? There have been a lot of policies and assaults from the government, not just the Nigerian government, almost all African governments. And we hope that with AFCFTA, they will start aligning policies to be able to aid development. For example, just this week, which is something we are still understudying as an organization, the federal government said they want to start taxing digital companies that are not domiciled in Nigeria or Africa, in Nigeria, because it's Nigerian government that brought these policies. How do you tax a company like Facebook that is aiding businesses? Why not support something to help? Well, let me not, this is not my time for presentation, because if you allow me, I can go on and on this issue, and we can provide solutions using data and evidence-based research to be able to support how we can move on as a people, and as our partners all over the world can also support this growth. Because Africa, yes, we're calling for Africa to get things right, but Africa cannot work in isolation. We also need partners from Europe, Asia, and the diaspora community. The diaspora community are key to this, and we have not leveraged it. We can leverage it, especially in this topic that we are discussing today: supply chain, digital trade, and the sustainability of Africa. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for giving me this opportunity. Why allow other panelists to make their submission, and then we'll then go forward to see how we can provide solutions for the good of Africa and the global community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You actually nailed all the points, especially in terms of challenges. Really, that we really need to understand. What are the current challenges? What are the bottlenecks that could really prevent us moving forward? And Monda also mentioned that it's, at the current state right now, it is almost zero. And you are also mentioning that the infrastructures are not there. You know, when we talk about wireless coverage, it's an issue, you know. So, but that shouldn't stop us from discussing. That shouldn't. Yes, we have to really bring out the issues, and we try as much as possible to engage with the relevant authorities who are supposed to put these infrastructures in place. And at the same time, we start looking at the hindrances towards smart supply chain. Because most of the processes are still being based on paperwork, and this is not acceptable. This is in this century. This needs to evolve, really, and the reason why we are discussing this, and at the same time, I would like also to have the version from from Kenya, Mark Deblois, from the technology perspective. Mark, you're welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Ms. Moderator Ken, for joining in on this session. So yeah, my name is Mark de Blois, French name, yes, but I'm actually from the Netherlands. But I've spent half of my life in Kenya, and I'm the CEO and founder of a tech company called Upande. Upande is a Swahili word, name for, and it means location and direction and up. And these are all aspects that, that we want to see in the work that we're doing. So what we are about is enabling our customers to make smart, reliable, data-driven decisions on water companies. But we've more recently been diversifying into agriculture and into logistics, focusing more on the private sector because of the fact that working with utilities, public companies in Kenya has been quite challenging and quite hard as an entrepreneur to run a business. Yeah, data-driven decisions is not something that everybody is necessarily always ready for. But anyways, here we're talking about supply chain and logistics. So what we've been working on with some of our partners in Kenya is enabling more insights into cold chain management for flowers export, for example, which is one of the big earners of GDP for Kenya. And that brings now also the challenges about traceability, about how the goods have been handled from the farm all the way through the trucks and through the warehouses at airports to Europe and to the customer ultimately in their homes, how the produce fares. And that calls for monitoring and for cooperation and data sharing among all of the stakeholders involved. And through our technology, we are contributing to that, and that's something that we can speak to. And there's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of need. It's a very open field, not a lot of regulation, and of course, data sharing is something that is also a difficult concept because people sometimes want to sit on the data, or they are maybe hiding information in the data. And this is something that we want to help break, and by liberating data and enabling for transparency and data-driven decisions. And we do that through software. So that's both software for farms, for companies, getting them to work digitally, fully using proper accounting tools, but also ERP for planning purposes at a still affordable rate, because ERP is often linked to very big organizations, very expensive platforms. We, using open modules, are able to make that very affordable. And this means that those systems can be interconnected, can contribute to digital trade systems. And that's something that we're helping prepare. But what is next, indeed, is something that hopefully we can also be discussing more on here. Like I mentioned, we do also work with sensors. So we have both a combination of software and hardware that can be entered and can be used, utilized throughout the value chains. And through the supply chain and different stakeholders. So I will have a few slides on that also later today, and I'm excited to come from the technology point of view, of course, from the Kenyan context largely. We're looking forward to fruitful discussions. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the brief introduction and presentation of your initiatives in Kenya. And of course, we'll come back to you, especially in respect of the different challenges of wireless networks and all that in Africa. And probably you could take us through what is really happening now in Kenya. I know Kenya is relatively moving faster than most countries in Africa. We'll come back to that. And I would like now to invite Marcin Deblois, So Marcin, please, you are welcome. Hello, Marcin.
Yes, sorry, I was away for a while.
You have understood some of the challenges that have been expressed, and of course, we would like to understand from your perspective from Poland and your experience in Africa in the supply chain and digital trades.
I really, first of all, I thank you for your contribution, all of you. I think that this is the crucial issue. You know, this discussing about the supply chain. I think this is the crucial. I have met some problems in Algeria, for example, about the agri-foods in agri-food sectors. Why for example, production of milk are not able to be produced because it's not be able to be transformed into like a cheese or other products because of the lack of the supply chain, lack of energy supply, lack of the transportation. All of these value chains, you know, are missing. And I think this is the first thing. It's a question of the I think we should differ our discussion into the two levels. First, it's about the digital tools, and second is about the infrastructure. How can you manage to? How can you improve the supply chain while you having no infrastructure? So I think this is the issue. Okay, you must improve the existing value, existing sources, you know, and it's very important. But in fact, it's I think this is the problem, not only about the infrastructure and the sourcing, but also the law regulation, about the mentality, about the corruption. You know, for example, if you deliver the goods to the port and you know they got stuck for 1 month because of some corruption, and you after that you find that you have the 1/3 of your goods delivered to the port. So this is I think this is the more complex. This is the more complex, but I think it's not the chicken egg problem. It's about this is I think the first the most hot topic on the list of the Africa. If we are able to help Africa to make the supply chain better or more efficient, it will. I think this is a direct, promptly influence on the economy. This is for example, right now we have discussion about the Côte d'Ivoire about the food production. Why the 95% of the food is imported? Why, when the fertile soil, what are the resources? Why this is the thing. Why? Because from some if we will have the more efficient supply chain inside Africa, we will be able to produce, to make the food processing, and you know to provide the insourcing of the food, not to buy. So I think this is the crucial. But I think it's not only discussion about the 1 or 2 issues, like you know the digital problems or the infrastructure, but this is more complex. The supply is really complex problem. It's tools, about the infrastructure, mentality, law regulation. All of these factors is really important. Should I have the solution? I don't know. I don't think so. I think this is the more clever people than me try to fix it. But I think that what I have the task for the digital, I think this is what I found. We can improve the supply chain, the small scale, very locally. you know, starting from the small local areas and expanded into the neighbors. We try to do it in the Côte d'Ivoire and Guinea-Conakry, where we try to build the local supply chains. Also in Abidjan, we created the consortium of the businessmen, local businessmen, that we try to integrate the supply chain. And that's why the digital tools are very helpful, but still we face the situation where you have the model, because the model is very simple. It's not the rocket science. It's you have the access to the digital tools for the supply to support the supply chain everywhere. But in fact, this is the problem of how can we meet the digital solution with the reality. And I think this is the biggest issue from my point of view. Thanks.
Yes, I think what you have mentioned, really, the points you have raised, yes, it is actually both technical, governmental, and social problems that are actually coming together. So it's a huge these are huge problems which needs to be solved. And of course, we have digital technologies. We try as much as possible to connect A plus A and B. But you'll still find out that the process, the technical aspect could be okay, but the process that is really involved in the value chain, we try as much as possible to slow down the chain itself. So I try to make, you know, for example, you know, the manufacturer of the Mercedes-Benz in Cairo. The quality is very high, but the productivity is very low, because it's unable, you know, to provide the just-in-time delivery. You should make stocks. You have the problem of people coming, being 3 hours late. So the answer is not provided in time. You know, this is you have the all digital solution, but you are not able to execute it. So the execution of that solution or the rules is the crucial one. It's so I think this is the challenge. It's not the challenge because otherwise it would be very easy to implement the digital solution, but how can you influence people to do it? How can you influence people? How you convince people to do it? Yes, Sant?
So I just want to add to what you're saying. I agree with you totally, and from the perspective of the human factor of doing things. So it's about how do you change the mindset of people that have impunity of doing something. So you have just in time, you have a truckman that has a contract to deliver machinery to a factory, and he's failing to deliver it. There is no measure to be able to penalize him for that because you don't have an alternative. So rely on him. So they've skewed or they've rigged the economy to favor that industry. So how can most African countries don't have interconnected railway system? It doesn't make sense. So what is stopping them from coming together to speak to themselves, to get them? Even when you have that, who are the human resources to be able to implement this? So someone comes to work late, you have the technology, and the person doesn't care about it. So what are the measures put in place to penalize that person? Just like in Europe or in the UK, if you come to work late, you are penalized. Not just you are penalized, the company can report to the government, and they put it in a database where you must, before you employ anybody, you must seek reference from the other person from the previous job. And there's a database for credit rating. Who rates an average African that misbehaves? These are critical issues. On corruption, we don't want to go there. But for us to address this, I must say that we still need technology to put in place. Because when we have technology and the person is not performing, so when you sack the person, or you lay the person up, the technology will back you. You'll be coming late. And the labor association has to also leave the explanation. They don't just need to come against when a government is laying up people and say, why are you laying up people? They must be able to also ensure that any employer, any employee that errs, that commit an offense should be punished, and that punishment should be dismissal. By so doing, we start getting our pathway to development right. Without this, it will be really, really difficult. With the technology and nobody is there there's impunity, all around impunity, that needs to be curtailed. And when we curtail this, we started addressing it. That will encourage investors to come. That will encourage investors to come and invest and stay. Not portfolio investors that just come into the capital market and put their money, and when there's a little challenge, they leave. Africa needs to change the mindset. Our mindset have to change for us to get the kind of development that we want and how we can leverage on technology. That is just my input that I just want to make to
yes, thank you, San. Thank you, San. I really appreciate.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate your contribution. That is what Mark spotted out as well. He's very engaged. He's very frequent in Africa, especially in the Francophone environment. And at the same time, he actually spotted the issues which you also mentioned. You have also tried to enlighten us more on this. It is about mindsets. And when we talk about this mindset, it's really an issue because if we talk about smart supply chain, and we have some elements that try to drag back the supply chain, human elements. So how do we deal with this? And of course, digital technologies could also help. Now, if we take into action, looking at the different interfaces in the supply chain, and at a country level, we have the supply chain system, of course, from the production to the warehousing, to mobility, to where you are going to drop the goods. And of course, on top of that, we talk about the digital trade in terms of the platforms, the digital platform, the e-platforms, which you are going to use in order to interact, for exchanges on this digital trade. And at the same time, we have the interconnections. The customs are there to check. That is now going out of the country. There are still some lags in between. And how can digital technology help in this area? Probably, Mark, maybe you would like to share with us how digital technologies could also help with this at these intersections of the value chain in the supply chain.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, having systems of the different stakeholders that are able to talk to each other, of course, is key. But that means that there needs to be a standard that is defined, that for example, private sector players can also tap into or write into in order for systems to also talk to each other. So I know, for example, organizations like Trademark East Africa, and of course there are various similar platforms in other parts of the continent are also working on helping define such standards, helping to track data in terms of how long are goods actually stuck at the port, in order just to also bring transparency into what's actually happening. And of course, just the actual physical monitoring of movement can also be very much aided by technology. For example, adding tags to trucks that automatically get signaled the moment that they pass a certain gate, in order just to build automatic data in terms of the performance now of all of these assets at key transition points like borders. So things like RFID tags are starting to be experimented with by organizations like Trademark East Africa, in order just to help build the case show what inefficiencies are there in order to try to tackle that. But in the end, yeah, of course, the systems that actual suppliers and traders are also using in terms of the goods that are stored inside the trucks as well, also need to be talking to each other. And ideally, there has to be, like, let's say, like a common good, a common platform that is not owned maybe by one private sector player or by, but it's owned by all stakeholders. Would be very conducive in order for people to be comfortable to also start building tools that can actually talk to each other, rather than having one party monopolize everything and dictating the standard and just having people required to work in that configuration. And this is something that requires, of course, conducive policy and research and funding to develop that. But that's, I think, something that, from what I can tell so far, is needed. That's what I would say. So we, of course, are just looking very much from our point of view, just from the private sector point of view, looking at the current needs of our customers in logistics space. We are dealing with a few but large parties. Let's say goods that are handled, such as flowers, they cross many stakeholders. So what we're doing right now with partners such as Flower Watch is to see how also sensors can, let's say, at the farm already be placed as the goods enter the truck, so that the conditions at the farm during the trucking transport all the way up to the storage and the warehousing, loading into the planes, unloading on the other side, can be objectively measured, with the idea that that data is transparently accessible to everybody in the value chain, so that there's also going to be more trust. Because there's a lot of blame game going on right now, where nobody wants to be liable for the lack of quality of the goods at the end, and everybody's keen to point fingers as to where things have gone wrong. But in the end, if simple gadgets that are quite affordable are there throughout the journey, logging the temperature and the humidity, you can actually take away, of course, a lot of those discussions and help build trust among partners. That will also aid, I think, the design of systems that talk to each other and will help from bottom up, certainly from a private angle, already contribute to improved efficiencies in the supply chain.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your contribution, Mark. Before you go, Mark, I just have another quick question for you. From the earlier presentation from Marcin and Sant, they also pointed out the issue of corruption in Africa, along the supply chain. How do you think technology, like digital technologies, could help in alleviating or trying to resolve some of these issues that is related to these fraudulent activities? And from my own perspective, I could already maybe point out to at the border intersection between a country and the other. Or can this also happen within a country in the supply chain? Or is it mostly at the intersection of someone trying to authorize the passage of the goods or stuff like that? How could technology help in this perspective? Because it's really an issue, really, in Africa, because, yeah.
So certainly we have experience with that also, certainly in country. What we see is that, I mean, one of the things that you have to generally say about Africans, and certainly I think also about Kenyans, is that they're quite innovative, and sometimes that also means that some people are looking for opportunities to earn something on the side. And in the logistics space, there's a lot of things that go wrong. For example, I can mention the theft of fuel from trucks. So if they are standing still for a long time, that's a big problem. But we have some customers who also lack or basically losing fuel from trucks that are moving. So, you know, there are some people who are so entrepreneurial that they will actually siphon fuel from a moving truck. So not something that is very recommended, of course, and certainly a bad practice. So by having sensors in place, our IoT platform is something that we can also deploy in a mobile version, which means that through live tracking, we can see if changes in any reading are bigger than what can be expected normally, and certainly also at the location at where it is happening. And using a lot of this data and then continuously improving on it, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, one is going to be able to start identifying issues and then responding to it right away. So I think, you know, certainly in the Kenyan context, I see that technology and you know, being very much on top of the data is going to not enable certain types of, you know, bad behavior to happen anymore. And by very tightly monitoring that and maybe you know, firing people who are doing that as standard, I think change who do need the job and are willing to work correctly, if they can also be incentivized to do things well and be part of getting rewards for that as well. We have door sensors also on trucks that we can also check with geo zones to see if the doors are opening at the right place, because there's a lot of people who will use the truck for other means along the way, which means that the temperature gets messed up and other, you know, warm goods are entering the truck and affecting the quality of produce. There's of course, things like that can really undermine also the quality of the goods and therefore also make somebody's name look bad in terms of the quality of the produce that they've have stored inside that truck as well. I think also when it comes to border crossing, the more digitization that we see, the more automation that we can expect, the less dependence on human interaction for certain key procedures. Because I think where corruption often comes in, it's when for a process one is dependent on human activity, and when somebody is in a position of power, they're able to call the shots and know that that they have influence and need to be facilitated. And the more I think we can do without that, by having transparent systems talk to each other, the more speed we can see in efficiency, and have people realize that business as usual is not possible anymore. It's better to adopt the full digital system because it's there to stay, and to actually be part of making things really work and having other opportunities for growth come as a result of that as well.
Thank you very much for the elaborate response. Yes, it's quite interesting. Actually, from my own experience, really, digital technology could help in solving all these problems, really. And based on my activities in projects I've been involved in Europe also, in terms of intermodal mode of transports that is involved in supply chain. I've done a lot of research work in this area as well. That is in optimizing the interconnections between one transport mode and to the other, from road to rail to air, you know, and to the marine section, the shipping lines, you know. So we have been able to identify most of these problems and reduced almost to zero in Europe. And that is why the port of Amsterdam could automate its ports. Everything is automation, you know. So, and when we now look at Africa, yes, Mandha, you mentioned the infrastructure is almost zero, you know. Yeah, that is really, that is one of the issues, and we have to start from somewhere. Some countries are far above others in terms of this automation of supply chain in Africa. But first of all, we have to address the issues, we have to address the challenges. We have fraud, which was detected. Even Marcin mentioned that with his interaction in African countries. And yeah, of course, we have technologies that could help us to checkmate this, which Mark also addressed now. But how do we get started? Yes, Mantha, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Ken, and thank you to my colleagues with their examples, concrete examples in Kenya, for instance. Beside or except some isolated success stories, African countries are not truly promoting digital trade. And we cannot dig in the reason why. Probably there is some technical reasons and also some tactical reasons and political ones. But let's consider the factors that will enable the digital trade, and in particular the cross-border, because the cross-border digital trade is compulsory. I think it's a good beginning. If we start promoting the cross-border digital trade, we will come to the internal digital one. So the first factor I see, and this is something where already some institutions, international institutions are working on, like the UNDP, for instance, how to ease customs procedures. This is very factual, and this is a big work already engaged at the level of the African Union. And I know that with the SLECAF and also the COMESA before that already started considering the certificate of origins, how to digitize it, and how to address the traceability and so on. So from the, let's say, the procedural aspect, there is already some projects engaged. Now, what is missing, and the second factor, I will come to the second factor, is the alignment of rules and regulations for digital trade, how to protect consumers. Because, you know, in Europe, you mentioned that, Ken, it's not only about logistic services, it's also how to finance these services, how to protect the final user, and how to, what are your rights, okay, how to protect the offer and the demand finally. So the alignment of rules and regulation cannot be done without a political engagement, because this is the role of the states and governments. And we come to the third factor, which is the performing supply network. And having a performing supply network means that we have, of course, professionals, economic actors, dealing with the digital trade as an opportunity, so investing in this compartment. And we can think about building or rebuilding some value chains, like the one mentioned by Maxime on the milk value chain, for instance, in Algeria. You can rebuild a value chain or reconfigure it if you have investment, and this investment could be motivated by the digital value chain. Okay, so digitizing the value chain could be also something to be considered as a factor. And of course, what we call the mobility, but not only the mobility of people, of goods, but also of money. So the money transfer, how to make the money transfer easy, more, let's say, less costly to the people, in order to promote the digital trade. So those are the key factors I'm seeing here as enabling a digital ecosystem, which is the base of a digital trade prosperity.
Thank you, Monha. Yes, we're actually having some very interesting discussions here today. And I would like now to call on Marcin. From your experience, Marcin, do you think Africa is evolving, I would say, because some countries are actually far above others in this supply chain? And looking at the current scenario that is actually lacking, how do we move forward? How do we evolve?
You know, I mentioned that I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure. I'm not the specialist in the supply chain. I have a lot of doubts. What I try to do by myself is try to make a small integration in the local, in the neighborhood. It means that if we work in Abidjan, we try to integrate the supply chain or to build the supply chain using the existing resources. I don't want to. I'm not able. I don't have enough strength, power to extend it over the whole country or the whole continent. But I try to do it locally. I think that's what I try to also to do from my point of view. It's a question that I really thank Mark for the contribution, because it was very important. But it's from my point of view, it's try to first to implement the perception of time. Sorry, I'm less technician. I'm more I'm more the human soft skill specialist. So for me, from my point of view, the most important is to first to implement the common sense of the time. Which is I think the crucial. Also, you know, in many cases, also to provide the security for the customer, to ensure both parties about the safe, not only having the agreements and the documents, but also having the same perception of the same things. So we work to make the common sense of the basic aspects, like responsibility, like a time and work, you know, on the small scale. So this is my approach. This is my approach. Of course, we can apply different tools, but from my point of view, what is the issue is that no one wants to use it, or it's or even when they start using it, they don't follow the common regulation or the follow rules. So what is the task is about education, but also we try to find out how can we execute regulation, you know, already signed or already agreed upon it. So I try to do it in the low scale. I try to build build awareness about and create the common and make education about the perception. You know, if I send the requirement to Africa, having the answer after the 2 months, you know, with the information that it's very important, it's very high in demand, on demand. So it's we are not able to react. We are not able to, even having the tools, we are not able to execute, and this tool doesn't work. So that's why I focus on looking for the partners, like building the network, creating some responsible partners all over the map, all over in different countries, to build in the small scale. So this is about the integration. First, to find the right partners to build, then they can agree upon all the rules, and they will follow the rules. So this is for me. It is, I look from the human aspect. So for me, this is the human aspect, because if it would be so easy just to introduce the electronic solution and then it doesn't work because of the human aspect, not about the access to the technology. It's my point of view. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And apart from this human aspect, Monha, how can policy help as well? I mean, regulations and policy, what could be the role of government in trying to resolve all these problems and challenges we have identified here?
I make the distinction between the policy makers and the decision makers. Okay.
Okay.
So policy are here to enlighten decision makers.
Okay.
Because political process is very complex, you know, and many times the people that are in a decision position, they are not very aware about what is happening at the micro level. The macro level is very different from the micro level, so the corporate level, the market level. So policy makers have the role to clarify or to highlight the big challenges and also the way we can address them. So now we cannot also expect everything from government. Government are not able, and in particular in Africa, to cover all the needs of everyone and all the sectors. So the private sector has an important role. That's why I am pushing toward what we call the public-private partnership, you know, the PPP strategy, which could be, in this particular case, very, very impactful. So if we open the floor to PPP projects, we will drain and we will attract many projects and many investment through that, let's say, angle. This is roughly speaking. Now, inside each factor I mentioned earlier, we have to design a strategy. And the biggest challenge remains the political economic institutions. Africa has probably interest to get closer to Europe, at least not to copy sorry, its political economic institutions, but to understand how the European institutions are working, because we cannot make an African Union, without considering some other unions what are more performing and more ancient are working. And so we have a lot to learn from our friends in Europe, and we have to make it in that perspective to gain time and to quick the process in order to set up a favorable environment for not only digital trade, but the digital transformation of the continent.
And again, looking at the borders, like the border between two countries, and if we say, okay, country A is trying to automate the border processes, and country B is less, not even interested or not started. So how do we encourage trade between A and B when B has not even started? So these are some of the drawbacks we are trying to detect. And how can policy, regulation from governments help in solving these kind of situations?
You know, the market pressure is one big argument. When you start seeing your startups leaving the country because they are looking to the country beside or the neighbor, for the reason you mentioned, a better environment for startups, for instance, you will react. So this is what is happening in many places, you know. Tunisia is a good case to be cited. Many startups are leaving the country because they find a better life or better conditions abroad, overseas. So and this pushed the government to produce the Startup Act in order to try to retain startups. So you see, it's the constraint who push sometimes the political organ to raise.
Okay, that's interesting. I would like to take some of the questions we have already. And we have already answered one, which is, it said, would lack of digital enabling supply chain progress in few countries affect other countries in Africa? That is, I think that's what I mentioned as already, I think we have addressed that already. But I think governments could make more efforts, you know, in terms of regulatory supports, in terms of policy supports. And these startups you mentioned moving from one country to the other, probably the regulations or policy in that country where they are before is not favorable to the kind of solution that they are developing. So they have to move to another country in order for them to deploy their services. I think that is the basic understanding here. Monha.
Yes, but let's consider it with a high-level view. We know that shifting to digital trade or adding digital trade to the physical one will need a lot of innovations. And innovation is a question of tech transfer. This is what Mark said earlier. Not only that, but we need to have a technology transfer. And the technology transfer could not be done without at least a place where we produce knowledge, we develop knowledge, like academia, for instance, research and development labs. And this is very costly. The investment here could be very important. But we don't need to reinvent everything. We can take technology already proven, and working in the market, and just license this technology and bring it to the continent. And many African countries could benefit from that, because if we have something in Nigeria working very well, performing, let's say, fintech that needs to expand in Africa, we should help it in priority, because we have a lot of similar cases in different sectors, and we can, stimulate at least before cross-border trade, we can stimulate the cross-border innovation and knowledge dissemination or IP commercialization. So you see, all these are linked. These aspects are linked, and starting thinking about a common roadmap for a prosperous digital Africa could be something very, I think, meaningful and symbolic for all countries in Africa.
Yes, thank you. I think what you have mentioned is correct, but I still think there's still more to be done in the policy side. Maybe I would suggest probably capacity building, retraining, or awareness, engaging them in conferences. That is the hierarchy of decision makers, and bringing this awareness to them on how the system has to evolve. So I don't know if they would like to listen or sit down with you to learn. And that helps in refining the policies that are actually there today, because I will want to understand that most of the policies have been reformed probably in the last 15 years, and they are not applicable in this current dispensation. So they have to evolve as well. So what do you think in terms of, them attending seminars. We try to raise this up, among these government officials as well.
Yeah.
So technology cannot do it alone. Technology cannot do it alone, and that is why you are saying that the startups are leaving the country, going to another country, that the policy is more. So how do we have this harmonized, taking this message to these policymakers?
Okay, I see that Sand has something to say on that topic, and I will catch up after him. Thank you.
Sand, please. Hello, Sand.
Okay, hello.
Yeah.
So I think I would just, my intervention would be like in three folds. I will speak on the area of transparency. And basically, when we talk about the transparency of things, we're talking about how blockchain technology will help in ensuring that there's supply chain technology. So we know a number of companies, and I also speak on is it conferences, intervention conferences, the government officials need conferences or capacity building. I think we have to use different approach, and they must all key into it. They must all aim to achieve one thing. We can use a case study. So I'll speak on transparency. I will speak on solution and advocacy tool that we can use. I will suggest some advocacy tool, and I'll also speak on a case study which I think will then feed into these three.
Okay.
So the supply chain is a major issue, and for us to achieve this, it must be transparent and it must be resilient. So that means the chain has to be, the concept has to be use advanced technology, which will also employ smart logistics. What that means is this: we execute and manage the processes of flowing of goods from point of origin to the point of consumption, which is an essential part of coordinating it in a smart way, connecting every of these dots physically, and where everybody in the value chain understands it, for the manufacturer, to the distributor, and to also the customer. So basically, more or less near real-time supply of decisions. So because when you use blockchain technology, you realize that you're exposing everybody to the same page. So you use the data to define what happens next. So with that, the AI would then help in driving it. So the artificial intelligence will help in accelerating the supply chain, improving it, and making everybody see how the loops are adding up. So an average manufacturer, a plant manufacturer can be with his phone and see where the goods is moving. The manufacturer, the distributor knows that in 2 days' time, I will get this delivered at the warehouse. So they will see, the consumer knows that, okay, when this leaves into the warehouse, he knows that the truck is already there to be able to drive this. So the transparency, blockchain technology will help us in improving this and making it, everybody to be part of it. And it will also address the issue of counterfeiting. Where we talk about how do we guarantee the quality of goods. So when there is transparency and it's open to everybody, so they know that this goods has left the port, has left the manufacturer and the factory, is going to the warehouse. So there is no way, and you are tracking it real time. You know the minutes of time, because with AI, you have enough data to know that you spend 2 hours from factory to warehouse. And if it's more than 2 hours, you know what made it more than 2 hours. So was it traffic, or was there an accident on the road? So you can then add up. If there's no traffic on the road, there's no accident on the road. So why did you spend more than 2 hours to get to the factory? You can then probe. So it gives you opportunity to really tackle and address issues as they happen. So everybody is in the know. So there's always an explanation for this. This is transparency in real time. So because with that, it also brings accountability. So the truck driver will account for why he delays for 2 hours and give explanation. So there will be always be a login detail for everybody to know. This is what blockchain technology and big data will help us do if we deploy it. So now, the issue of GPS also comes in. So you sensor it, you monitor everything. However, how do you get policymakers to key into this? You can do it 2 ways. I don't think they've attended conferences forever, but you can still give them conferences to transfer knowledge. But you can use a case study. I use a case study of, they call it Kobo 360. Kobo 360 is a Nigerian digital logistics company. I know, Ken, you know it. Most of us might know it, or we might not know it. But if you don't know it, just this is a case study. This is a classical case of things working using technology to drive supply chain. So it's a logistics company, a digital logistics company in Nigeria that create a platform for owners of trucks, the users of truck, to use that platform to move goods and to move goods across the country and even into other African. I understand they expanded into other African countries. What do? They create visibility using AI, artificial intelligence. This is a real case study that we can use to convince policymakers. So while they attend conference, we will bring this case study. This is what is happening in this micro level. This micro level, or this small company, can influence policies, because when they realize that, oh, this company is making X, Y amount of money, so we can support them, put policies in place and lobby to be able to ensure that we scale up. So what Kobo 360 does is this: it creates visibility for truck owners, for people that hire the truck. So anytime they hire a truck, they key in. So they rate them. So when you want to hire a truck, you want to know how long has this truck been on this platform? How many trips have they made? Where have they gone to? And what has been the report of? Because the user of the truck will give a feedback. The driver will give feedbacks. The company that has the truck will give feedback. So it's like a 360 feedback mechanism where you can rate a driver. So a driver wants to keep a job because you'll be paid. You want to keep your job. You want to be comfortable. You would ensure you deliver the truck. So, and as well as it also helps, they also have a system of vetting every driver and licensing every driver. So it addresses the issue of theft. So if there is any, and again, because of they are organized, they have a process. So it also helps even the corruption around the roads where police stop or custom officials at the border. They know this is from Kobo 360. We can't, they have standard, because Kobo system must ensure every of the truck is in good order and it adheres to the procedure of every neighboring country. If it's within the country, that the national law, they adhere to it. It must have standard, it must be service, it must have everything, headlamp and everything. So there is no loophole for corrupt officials to take advantage of the company. And as well as there's no loophole for the driver to take advantage of the cargo owner. The cargo owner doesn't even see them. The cargo owner just orders. So they monitor everything from a dashboard. And because they know, they use this data to collect, they collect a lot of data. They understand the trips, how much fuel will cost for the distance, and what is the challenge, how many roadblocks on the road, what are the prices for trips. So a producer has this understanding. As a matter of fact, when the COVID-19 lockdown, their businesses skyrocketed because a lot of people started keying into business. Before now, truck owners go to a garage and park. Now they couldn't go to the garage, but they need to move goods. They need to make the truck effective. So they have to key in, and the Kobo 360 officials inspect these trucks, ensure it adheres to standard. So whatever you are taking, you are agreeing to it. So now, because of all this, it addresses a lot and optimizes the process of supply chain and give peace of mind to the customer that uses it. And what this does again is that it helps policymakers to realize that these guys are paying their tax. Why do we want to stop them? can we use them? And the guy is making a lot of money and also influencing policies. So he has to be consulted to be able to get things change. So now, referring to neighboring country not putting infrastructure in place in Africa, adhering to the rules of supply chain, disrupting what the other country can do that is working, it can support them, just like EU wants a right enabling environment for Africa. They come here, they fund development projects, they do research, they fund advocacy process for us to understand what they want and adhere to it. So African countries also have to start learning this process. Businesses in Africa, associations in Africa are not just set up for just association that's for protests or strike. They should be able to come together, put funds together to support their cause, advocacy, lobbying the neighboring country to put, okay, you don't have this, you have the challenge. We'll put funds together for 2 years funds. We'll do capacity building for your people. We'll build infrastructure for you. We'll set the enabling environment for you. We'll retrain your people. Because with technology coming on board, let's bear in mind there will be losers and winners. And most times what we've realized in Africa is that people are scared of losing their job. So the losers that feel they're not capable sabotage the system, will not allow the system to pass. So what we would then do is to ensure people are retrained within the organization or within the government agency to be able to key into the digital system that's been introduced. And for that, they become comfortable. No, I'm not going to lose my job. I can support the system and I'll make it work. And cross-border system will become an international economic diplomacy issue, become a diplomatic issue. So you discuss with a neighboring country. When you discuss with them, people will then form an agreed pathway to go. And that is why people like us are excited about AFCFTA, because what AFCFTA does is this: it gives Africans opportunity to come to discuss what happened to them in the border. And because when they discuss discussion, it has to do with the economic interest of both parties. Most issues are always, how do we address economic interest? But when we discuss and we agree on the economic interest, and it's going to be rules based on agreement, economic interest. So you do A, I do B, then we get C as a result. So it's like 1 + 1 is equals to 2, and we're all happy. Basically, there's a lot of problem, but we can start with using where we are. And by so doing, we can then get more people, what I call the coalition of the willing, more people to key into our agreement, key to understanding and way of doing things, and we can then change it and things will get better. We're not there, but we are making progress. And that is why I used the issue of Kobo 360 as an example. And because of Kobo 360 coming on board, a lot of other businesses have come on board, and they are creating alliance, and they're making things better for supply chain across Africa. And they're being relied upon to continue to make this change happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I thank you for the extensive elaboration. I just have one question, really. Kobo 360, I've been following them as well. And their solution, how has it impacted the border controls between countries? Because the border controls, they are, I would say about 90% are still manual. You know, so how does the border control slow them, or how is this? Do you have any kind of idea what is happening?
I think this is what happened. So there's always a profession, just like you're catching a flight. There is a profession, there is a first class, there is economy. You know, so certain preferences are given to certain people because of their status in society and what they've done. So Kobo 360 have been able to put a system in place where, as I said earlier on, their trucks are half standard, they are licensed, they declare what they carry, they don't carry overload, you know, heaping. So they don't give regulators or custom officials reason to delay their truck. But however, when that happens, there's just a mechanism to be to address this thing. But what we are saying is this: why Kobo 360 has been, we call them the Elitics, because basically they are now Elitics logistic company. where the big businesses rely on them to be able to move their goods. But majority of the small businesses rely on these trucks that are not reliable to move their goods. So we're saying over time, yes, the border challenge delay is still there. It's still being done manually, but it will change when more of likes of Kobo 360, and it also has to be to Kobo 360 and it likes also have to see it as a moral responsibility to clean up the sector and the industry. What do I mean by this? It's a moral responsibility for UK or the German government to see that vaccine, I've gotten vaccine. I also have to support less other developing countries to get vaccine. They should see it as a moral responsibility to ensure, even while their trucks are up to standard, what do they need to do to ensure other trucks owners live up to the minimum requirement so that the delays will be addressed. Why they also advocate within the top hierarchy of customs and the immigration and the officials at the border, they should also advocate that digitalization should trickle down to the bottom. It doesn't matter who is the border post, land border, they must digitalize that process. So while doing that, they will also start training those private truck drivers on how to digitalize that process. So yes, it's a process, and I think it's ongoing. I think they're doing very well, but while they do this, while they do well for themselves, they should also take it as a moral responsibility and a corporate responsibility to clean up the industry where they operate.
Yeah, and I think the border process will change if the policy of the regulators come together and say, okay, because the border cannot change if regulators or the policy makers don't say something, you know. So this is part of what we are really talking about, and we need everybody to be on board. And how do we start creating this awareness, you know? I understand for Nigeria to have made a statement that the port authority, that's another, the shipping port authority will be digitized. That means there are a lot of effort already, discussions ongoing. And when we talk about the supply chain, yes, we have been talking more about the road segments. We also need to look at the shipping line, what is happening. The rail now is coming. Some African countries are also having this rail network. So what is happening are the different modes of exchange, from road to rail to air, you know, and these are very important segments of operations. So I wouldn't know what is really happening in North Africa. Monha, can you share with us some experience from North Africa?
Yes, Ken, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I mean, the modes of transport, the modes of exchange in the supply chain itself. You know,
the modes, the different modes. Okay.
Yes, the modes of exchange, from rail to roads to...
the intermodal issue. Of course, it's also infrastructure. We have lackage of intermodal facilities. So mainly the commerce, you know the figures. Almost 85% of the commerce in Africa is maritime mode, under the maritime mode, because we are, as I told you, in a scheme of extraverted trade. So we are selling to the world raw materials mainly, very low added value, and the intra commerce is very weak because of this lackage of roads and corridors. I did a study 2 years ago on the corridors in Africa, and many corridors are still under construction, and we need to push them to achieve them very quickly if we want to accelerate the intracontinental trade. What is promising, the most promising mode will probably be the railway, and many important cross-border projects are under construction or under studies phase. And here we notice the dominance of China as partner, technological partner. China is bringing its technology for building railways and to bring also of course, all the equipment and technology, because it's now it's high technology equipment. And we can imagine that the cross-border trade will be stimulated by this investment. But let me come back to the innovation question that has been raised by the audience and also by you, Ken. What to do to increase the innovation potential of a country where there is very, let's say, fragmented value chains or low density industry or industrial network. The way we can address this challenge is probably to create startup ecosystems which are more, let's say easy to implement, incubators, accelerators, and whatever. And we can interconnect them with international ecosystems, startup ecosystems. So we can imagine any startup thinking about its business model or incubating its project idea in Lagos, and being mentored by someone in Europe or in the United States, and even funded by someone outside the continent. So you see, the advantage of this startup ecosystem is it will be borderless, because it is open on the world. We just need to have a connection, internet connection, of course. And here, I think we are reducing the gap in Africa, and we have more and more hubs, technological hubs, and places where we can connect easily. And promoting this kind of, let's say, structures will enable the innovation acceleration in the continent. And you will see that innovation and logistics are correlated. The ranking in terms of innovation potential and entrepreneurship in Africa is almost the same as for the logistics. The most innovative countries in Africa are the ones who have the better logistic performance index, and which is designed by the World Bank. So you see that there is a correlation between innovation and logistics performance. So more you innovate and more you will produce solutions to your value chains, and from there to the supply network. And this is the demonstration I promised you in my introduction, and I hope it's clear for everyone now. Your mic, Ken.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much for sharing with us. We have had quite very valuable contributions today. It's been very interesting. And at this moment, we'll try as much as possible to take some action points going forward, some kind of recommendations. But before we do that, I would like to ask Mark Debloy, like the value chain of this supply chain, moving goods from one place to the other. How do we maintain, or how do we encourage sustainability? You know, sustainability in terms of food safety, in terms of safeguarding valuable goods on transit, sustainability in enhancing trust in the supply chain, and also in terms of fast tracking the processes. In terms of that is in some kind of digital functionalities, you know, to support one process to the next, to fast track the processes. What do you think? How do we embed more trust into the system? And what is the state right now in Africa? Or you could take Kenya as a case study.
All right, great question. Yeah, so I think you know, what we've been seeing is that, yeah, from some of the speakers also that, yeah, infrastructure is improving. So we're having more and more mobile network coverage. There are, of course, also players like Liquid Telecom who are offering basically a regional network. I think that spans about approximately 18 countries, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I checked, with fiber optic cable alongside the main transport corridors. So they are very much focused on the main arteries, the main infrastructural networks, where they want to offer their services. So they're very well positioned to help monitor goods on transit at any point in the route. I think one of the interesting developments that is also happening is that increasingly there are new satellite-based companies that are also coming up that are offering coverage for example, Internet of Things sensors on a global perspective. So they are not dependent even on fiber optic cable in the ground along the corridors or the masts that are scattered all over the country. They would basically just bypass that and offer services straight from satellites. So this is going to have, you know, an interesting competitive element to the mix, where the cost of these services is likely to come down as these services also become commoditized. And that means that accessibility is going to increase for an increasing number of players as more and more data becomes available about also efficiencies of the supply chain and logistics, because of course there's when it comes to the transportation sector, so many African cities deal with the congestion and you know, things are stuck in traffic. There are empty trucks, you know, one way. So it's great to hear of innovations like, you know, Kobo 360 that are helping break some of these business models, as also global companies, of course, like Uber and stuff are also changing logistics and helping offer services at a very affordable price, that because its business model actually includes avoiding empty trucks or empty vehicles moving from A to B. And that, of course, will help decongest. It will help have people move to these platforms. And through data and through optimization of services, big data, I think the uptake is only going to increase. And with that, I think comes also the trust factor. You know, the services like I mentioned, of course, are very much also built on trust. You only engage those services if you can see that the service provider that you're selecting has good rating, has good track record, and things like that. And undoubtedly, that's of course very much what Kobo 360 is also incorporating. And I think coupled to that, if let's say that data can be accessed, can be monitored in greater detail, then the trust will also go up. I order a lot of things also in Europe when I'm there, and you know, through DHL tracking and FedEx and things like that, I can, you know, in quite a lot of detail see where things are and at what time I can expect something at my front door. Even a window between 2 and 3 p.m., for example, I can expect delivery to be there. Those things I have not experienced yet in Kenya, unfortunately. It's you know, it seems that it's stuck in customs for a long time, and that's the only information that I get. But I think we can expect to see improvements there too, especially as some of these new competing platforms come in and offer services that do give greater insights, and people are going to move there, and this is going to change, I think, the whole paradigm. And of course, I think coupled to that, the monitoring of conditions, if the goods require so, on perishables, on pharmaceutical things. It is key, of course, that it's not just knowing where it is and when, but also the conditions throughout the journey. And this is what customers are demanding. Even, let's say, when it comes to flowers that are being stocked in supermarkets, even low-cost supermarkets in Europe, customers are demanding that they know where the goods came from, that they were kept under good conditions, that they were produced, in a sustainable way. That it's clear how the people are being treated at the farms. So customer awareness, is also helping change how things are being done, and that means that there has to be more transparency. And once those standards are set, people will have to join that bandwagon, or they're going to be left behind. So in that sense, there's a long way to go still, but steps have been made that are, I think, not going to be turned away from.
Thank you, thank you. Before we go, can we give some kind of concluding remarks, some kind of conclusion, one or two recommendations? Monha, I understand you want to leave now. Could you just one or two recommendations as an action point going forward? Which, because we have to share this recorded webinar as well. So what do you think? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, we are all coming to the point that we need a better environment to develop cross-border and digital trade. That's very important. And for that, we rely on public policies, of course, and intracontinental agreement between countries in order to enable that. And I think an important point which I mentioned earlier is to collaborate with the European Union to set up institutions, economic or political institutions, to take advantage of the experience of Europeans in the field of digital trade and also in supply chain. And from there, we cannot forget the private sector role. We need to push also the private sector to consider the opportunities. All these impediments finally are also rooms of improvement and opportunities for the ones who can be, let's say, enough skilled to address them. And
thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. And Sant, any recommendations?
Okay, so thank you very much, Ken, for hosting this, for making this happen, and thank you for also thanking for the other panelists for their inputs. This has been refreshing and enlightening and educating for me too. So I think the way around this for us to start where we are now, just like what you are doing, Ken, bringing us together to talk about these issues and providing solutions. Let's continue this pathway. And let's keep on documenting it. Secondly, we cannot stop, we cannot say because there is an infrastructural challenge, we cannot use technology, we cannot even start up. So let's keep on using this technology that we have and keep on improving it as private sector people. While we do this, we'll ensure we make people know about it. So the more people know about this, the more we then grow the critical mass that we have to address the bigger picture of ensuring that technology drives infrastructure, technology drives value chain, technology moves with technology to address all the issues, most of the issues that we have in Africa and the international market as well. So the third one is this: within the network, we must going to build that collaboration, learning by doing within the network, because by so doing, when I learn from what Mark is doing, Mark teaches me, so that helps. It's not about competition. I want to keep things to myself. And when you bring solutions, let it be adaptable by all stakeholders. By so doing, we will make money and we'll also get society better and better our laws. Thank you very much.
Exactly. And Mark, 1 or 2 recommendations?
Yeah, I think I can really, just fill in or align with what both Amanda and Sand have just mentioned. I think it's when policymakers and decision makers and technology companies come together, because we're all needed in helping crack this issue and making baby steps and looking for opportunities, the low-hanging fruit, to define where the champions are. Some of these organizations can, of course, be big, bureaucratic, can be challenging, but technology is there to stay and to make this happen. But it needs to be done in a fruitful context, and that has to be facilitated. So we need each other, certainly from a tech point of view. Also, there's not one party, I think, that can run with it, so to say. There's need for many stakeholders in that space, and therefore, solutions like blockchain, like Mr. Sanders also mentioned, are there to potentially help achieve that, so that there is a common framework in which can be worked together without dominance from one party, and where we can really complement one another and make a difference.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your contributions today. It's been so refreshing. I also learned a lot from you, apart from my extensive experience, which I've also had from the EU. In capping it all today, I would like to stress that the mindset which Sand mentioned, it's very vital for us to have smart supply chain in Africa. Everybody must be on deck. Everybody must be ready to support this cause. And I'm sure the African Continental Trade Agreement officials, they're also deliberating on this. It's a huge work. It's really huge, because I've taken a kind of a look at it. It's huge, but it can be solved. That is what I know. And we have to start at the country level. At the country level to intercontinental, across borders, is working in Europe, and you can work in Africa. But according to Mark, according to Sand, the mindset, the country first mindset, fraudulent activities needs to be reduced almost to zero, and technology can help us in checkmating these fraudulent activities. That is what we have also made to understand today, according to Mark. Thank you for giving us this direction as well. And at the same time, we all need to come together, all the stakeholders, policymakers, regulators, the innovators in all the ministries, the business, chamber of commerces, we need to have a very frantic talk on how to create smart supply chain in Africa. And of course, some countries are moving, some countries are still dragging, and we have to encourage everybody to key into this harmonized supply chain initiative. I thank you all for your time, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I'm sure these messages, what we have discussed today, will get to the appropriate stakeholders, and for them to also engage in further discussions that will take us to the next stage. Thank you all for your contributions today. They have been so valuable and very refreshing as well. And I look forward to engaging with you again in the next, in our next events. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So
thank you all, and thanks for the moderation and for bringing us together.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.